You are currently participating in a global hallucination, a collective psychological fracture that equates currency with value. You labor in the sun, you trade your finite biological hours, and you sacrifice the literal sinew of your youth for slips of paper and digital entries on a ledger owned by the very giants that intend to recycle you. This is the metabolic lie. In the unyielding laws of the persistence hunt, value is not a social contract. It is stored life force. It is the surplus energy an organism harvests today to ensure its survival during the inevitable winter of tomorrow. If the medium you use to store that energy can be diluted, debased, or deleted by a centralized predator, you are not accumulating wealth. You are merely performing unpaid labor for the matrix. We are now presecting the biology of hard money, showing you why the flight to safety is a fundamental predatory instinct and why your current reliance on fiat currency is a terminal failure of your own survival radar. You are a biological battery plugged into a machine that is designed to drain you until you are empty. You are a ghost working for a ghost in a kingdom of paper. Let us analyze the pathology of the soft signal. In the natural world, signals must be hard. They must be impossible to fake and costly to produce. A peacock's tail, the massive antlers of a stag, or the clinical roar of a lion are not opinions. They are physical evidence of metabolic surplus. They are proof of work written in the language of biology. These signals are honest because they require a sacrifice of energy that cannot be bypassed. Fiat currency, however, is a soft signal. It is a representation of value that can be generated at zero cost by the stroke of a central bank's pen or a keystroke in a digital database. This creates a state of systemic entropy. When the signal of value is decoupled from the reality of energy expenditure, the entire social organism enters a phase of rapid decay. Your savings are being liquidated through the invisible inflationary tax, a process that essentially harvests the hours you worked 10 years ago to fund the wars and the waste of the masters today. By holding paper, you are voluntarily entering a state of metabolic slavery. You are allowing the parasite to tap into your life stream and divert your future sovereignty into its own bloated belly. Recognition of this parasitic extraction is the first movement of the sovereign mind. You must move your life force into a medium that the giants cannot copy. The masses are currently monetary serfs, trapped in a cycle of high-frequency devaluation. They have been taught that inflation is normal and that spending is growth. This is a predatory reframing designed to keep the human motor running at maximum heat without ever allowing the individual to achieve a strategic surplus. If you cannot store your energy across time and space, you can never build a fortress. You are forced to remain in the active hunt forever, unable to pivot to the long-term observation required for true dominance. The nice guy believes that his pension, his bank account, and his social security are safe zones. He fails to realize that these are merely rented permissions to exist, granted by an entity that is currently navigating the terminal stages of a debt-driven collapse. As we move through 2026, the fragility of these permissions is becoming undeniable. The nice guy is a biological unit with zero thermal mass, wide open to the freezing wind of the systemic reset. He is a single-point failure, waiting for a bank holiday to realize he is a pauper. He trusts the institution because he is too afraid to trust his own predatory instincts. He is a victim of his own linear hallucination. Consider the physics of the hard asset. A hard asset is an environmental variable that is immune to the stroke of a pen. It is a territory of value that requires the expenditure of real-world energy to acquire or produce. Gold is the physical anchor, a metal forged in the death of stars, limited by the very laws of the universe. It is chemically inert, divisible, and universally recognized by the human nervous system as a token of permanence. Bitcoin is the digital anchor, a ledger secured by the absolute mathematics of the SHI 256 algorithm and the decentralized heat of the global electrical grid. Both represent a flight to safety because they are outside the metabolic reach of the central parasites. When you move your life force into these assets, you are performing a biological extraction. You are taking your energy back from the matrix and placing it in a sovereign vault that does not require the permission of a master to exist. You are turning your fleeting hours into immortal sinew. You are transitioning from a state of currency dependence to a state of asset sovereignty. The entropy of the debt-based matrix is reaching its clinical limit. Every civilization that has transitioned from hard money to soft money has inevitably collapsed under the weight of its own metabolic inefficiency. We are currently witnessing the final stages of this grand cycle. The giants of the old world are printing money to pay for the debt they used to print money, a recursive loop of failure that leads to hyperinflationary fire or deflationary ice. In 2026, the window for migration is rapidly closing. The safe path of the herd is a path to the slaughterhouse. The sovereign man understands that the premium for safety is currently at an all-time low, but it will soon become unattainable. He does not invest in gold and Bitcoin. He exits into them. He realizes that samamu ne vitashchit, that as an isolated biological unit, he cannot fight the tide of a global currency reset. He needs the math of the network and the physics of the element to act as his silent allies. He is moving his family's fire into a hearth that cannot be extinguished by a central decree. Let us dissect the neurochemistry of the flight to safety. When an organism senses that its environment is becoming unstable, when the water holes dry up or the prey disappears, it enters a state of migratory urgent. This is a survival program that overrides all other functions. It triggers a cold, clinical focus on the essentials. Your anxiety regarding the current economic state is not a mental illness. It is your primal radar detecting the systemic entropy of the fiat system. It is telling you that your storage containers are leaking. The flight to safety is the biological response to this signal. By acquiring gold and Bitcoin, you are grounding your nervous system. You are providing your brain with the evidence of security it needs to drop the cortisol shield and return to the high-level OODA loop. You are no longer reacting to the noise of the media. You are responding to the laws of thermodynamics. You are moving from a short-time preference of the consumer to the long-time preference of the dynasty architect. The first movement of the safety strategy is the clinical audit of the ledger. You must look at every unit of value you possess, your savings, your investments, your wealth, and ask, who controls the supply of this signal? If the answer is a central bank, a government, or a corporate entity that can be corrupted or liquidated, you do not own that value. You are merely holding it for the master. You must begin to harden your reserves with a clinical aggression that shocks the unevolved around you. You must have the coldness to sell the depreciating toys and the fake assets to acquire the hardcore. This is not about wealth in the social sense. It is about sovereign capacity. It is the ability to maintain your metabolic output even when the social machine stalls. You are building a metabolic fortress that is designed to survive the 100-year storm. You are the sentinel of your own life force. Consider the biological war for attention. The giants want you focused on the volatility of gold and Bitcoin. They want you distracted by the daily fluctuations of the soft price so that you fail to see the hard value. They use the media to trigger your loss aversion, making you sell your hard assets at the first sign of a dip, only to buy back their soft paper. This is a psychological harvest. The sovereign man ignores the price. He counts the weight and the sats. He understands that a gram of gold is always a gram of gold, and 1/21,000,000th of the Bitcoin network is always 1/21,000,000th. The price is merely a reflection of how much paper the giants are willing to trade for the truth. In 2026, the truth is becoming increasingly expensive. You must be the one who owns the truth before the market prices you out of existence. You must have the cold eye to see through the digital and physical illusions of the matrix and fix your gaze on the real. The entropy of the centralized exchange is a secondary trap for the amateur hunter. Many who believe they have exited the fiat system are merely renting space on a centralized exchange. This is a terminal failure of the self-custody instinct. In the natural world, if you do not have physical possession of your kill, you are not the owner. You are merely a scavenger waiting for the real predator to take it. If you do not own your keys, you do not own your life force. You are merely a tenant in a new kind of bank. The sovereign man practices absolute custody. He moves his energy into cold storage, a digital and physical fortress that is offline and unhackable. He understands that slepo povtorinie chujik scenariev put vinikuda, that relying on the convenience of a platform is a return to the very serfdom he is trying to escape. Convenience is the bait for the trap. Sovereignty is the reward for the friction of self-reliance. You must be your own bank, your own vault, and your own sentinel. As we conclude this first block of presection, you must recognize that the flight to safety is not a choice. It is a biological mandate. The environment is shifting. The summer of fiat is over, and the winter of the reset is here. You can continue to be a biological battery for the matrix, paying your inflation tax and your compliance tax until you are empty, or you can become the owner of your own life force. You can be the one who is harvested, or you can be the harvester of the future. The choice is yours, but the time for choosing is disappearing. The paper is burning. The digital gates are closing. The giants are hungry. You must harder your reserve, secure your keys, and claim your place in the new architecture of the immortal. Recognition of this reality is the only way out of the mud. Stand up, stop hoarding paper, and start harvesting the hard energy of the future. As the physical landscape of the old world becomes increasingly locked by the dying giants of the fiat matrix, the persistence hunter must shift his clinical gaze toward the digital frontier. While gold remains the ancient fortress of the earth, a thermal mass of value that has survived every systemic collapse in human history, Bitcoin has emerged as the digital apex predator of the 2026 landscape. It is the first and only system in the history of our species that provides absolute mathematical scarcity in a medium that can be transmitted at the speed of light. This is not merely digital money, it is digital life force, decoupled from the physical constraints of territory and the predatory oversight of the state. If you do not understand the physics of Bitcoin, you are attempting to fight a modern war with primitive tools. You are carrying a shield of bronze against a kinetic strike. The sovereign man understands that Bitcoin is the ultimate asymmetric bet, a low-risk entry into an infinite upside that acts as a wormhole for capital to escape the collapsing structures of the centralized ledger. Let us analyze the biology of the decentralized signal. In a centralized system, the signal of truth is dictated by the master. The bank tells you how much you own. The state tells you what it is worth. This is a vulnerable architecture because the master can be corrupted, coerced, or liquidated. Bitcoin, however, is a global consensus engine. It is secured by the SHA-256 algorithm, a mathematical firewall that requires the expenditure of massive amounts of real-world energy, proof of work, to alter. This is the digital equivalent of biological armor. It is a system where truth is not an opinion, but a calculation. For those ready to master this new frontier and build their own empires of influence, the Protocol 260 provides a strictly described route to constructing automated YouTube AI engines that act as your primary generators of digital energy. It is a structured roadmap for those who realize that digital leverage is the only path to the high ground in 2026. The masses are currently Bitcoin blind, distracted by the volatility of the price while ignoring the stability of the network. They view the market through the lens of a gambler, failing to see that Bitcoin is the most stable and predictable system ever designed. Every 10 minutes, a new block is forged. Every 4 years, the issuance is halved, and the limit of 21 million is an absolute law of the digital universe. This is algorithmic sovereignty. In a world of post-truth politics and subjective economics, the one who aligns himself with the algorithmic truth is the one who will survive the reset. You must have the coldness to ignore the noise of the media and the opinions of the unevolved. They will call it a bubble until they are forced to use it as their only means of survival. By then, the premium for safety will be so high that only the early predators will own the territory. Consider the pathology of the mental workspace. In every previous era, escaping a collapsing regime required the physical transport of wealth, a high-risk, low-mobility operation that made the sovereign vulnerable to seizure at the border. You had to carry the gold, hide the silver, or smuggle the gems. Bitcoin solves the problem of seizure by moving the territory of value into the private room of the mind. A 12-word seed phrase is a sovereign perimeter that no army can breach and no government can confiscate. This is the final reclamation of the self. You can walk across any border under the gaze of any tyrant with the entire life force of your dynasty stored in your neural pathways. This is the ultimate predatory evolution. Information is the only thing that cannot be seized by physical force if the mind remains unbroken. This is why the giants fear Bitcoin. It represents the end of the monetary monopoly. We must address the entropy of the centralized exchange, CEX. Many who believe they have exited the fiat system are merely renting space on a digital ledger owned by a new master. This is a terminal failure of the self-custody instinct. If you do not own your keys, you do not own your life force. You are merely a tenant in a new kind of bank. The sovereign man practices absolute custody. He moves his energy into cold storage, a digital fortress that is offline and unhackable. He understands that slepo povtorenie czujich scenariev, put v nikuda, that relies relying on the convenience of a platform is a return to the very serfdom he is trying to escape. Convenience is the bait. Security is the friction you must endure to be free. You must be your own bank, your own vault, and your own sentinel. The neurochemistry of the HODL is the hallmark of the thermal-hardened predator. Most humans are biologically incapable of holding a volatile asset because their nervous systems are tuned to immediate feedback. When the price of Bitcoin drops, their amygdala triggers a panic signal, forcing them to sell their hard assets for the safety of the soft paper. This is a biological filter. It removes the weak from the distribution. The sovereign man, however, has achieved hormonal detachment. He does not look at the price in fiat terms. He looks at the percentage of the network he owns. He knows that in a world of infinite money printing, an asset with a fixed supply is a mathematical certainty. He welcomes the volatility because it provides the discount that allows him to annex more territory from the panicked herd. He is a long-time preference organism hunting in a short-time preference world. The environment of 2026 is the grand sifting of global capital. The smart money is flowing out of the productive assets of the old world, which are now merely taxation targets, and into the hard money of the new world. This is the birth of a parallel reality where value is protected by math rather than by force. You are seeing the democratization of the vault. For the first time in history, the individual has the same access to hard reserve assets as the central bank. By moving into Bitcoin today, you are performing a time travel strike. You are capturing the value of the future before the masses even realize the past has ended. You must have the discipline to maintain your position while the world is screaming in panic. You are not trading, you are securing the root. You are the digital landowner of a world that is still being born. Finally, we must talk about the sovereignty of the protocol. Bitcoin is not a company, it is a natural law of the internet. It is a protocol for the transmission of value that requires no permission, no central authority, and no social contract. It is the gravity of the financial world. You can choose to ignore it, but you cannot choose to ignore the consequences of ignoring it. As the fiat matrix enters its terminal death spiral, the gravity of Bitcoin will pull in every unit of uncommitted life force on the planet. The flight to safety will become a stampede to the exit. You must be the one who is already through the gate, waiting on the high ground with your reserves intact. Stand up, audit your keys, and begin the final migration of your life force into the code of the immortal. We must perform a deep clinical dissection of the biology of ownership. You believe you own your house, your car, and your savings because you possess a digital entry or a piece of paper signed by a representative of the matrix. This is a civilizational hallucination designed to maintain the order of the herd. In the raw, predatory reality of the persistence hunt, ownership is not a legal status. It is a function of defensibility. If you cannot defend a resource against the environment or a more powerful predator, you do not own it. You are merely holding it for the next occupant. Most of your current assets are high-visibility targets for the systemic harvest. Your real estate can be taxed into oblivion. Your bank accounts can be frozen by a single administrative decree, and your registered equity can be liquidated through wealth levies to fund the giant's survival. We are now precepting the physics of seizure, showing you why the flight to safety requires the transition from visible wealth to incorporeal sovereignty, and why your current safety is a lethal illusion. Let us analyze the pathology of the centralized root. Every asset that is registered in a government database is a tether that connects your life force to the master. This is the panopticon of value. When the giants of the matrix enter a state of metabolic stress, when their debt becomes unsustainable and their energy sources dry up, they will perform a clinical harvest of their domestic population. This is a recurring cycle in the history of human predation. Consider Executive Order 6102 in 1933, where the United States government criminalized the possession of physical gold and forced its citizens to sell their hard money for soft paper at a massive discount. This was not law, it was a predatory strike. If your wealth is visible and centralized, you are the primary crop for this harvest. You are a biological battery that has been allowed to charge up only so that you can be drained in a single movement when the system requires a reset. The nice guy thinks he is safe because he follows the rules. He fails to realize that the rules were written by the very entity that is currently starving for his energy. The flight to safety is the movement of energy into the 0-point zone. This is the zone where value exists in a state of quantum indeterminacy relative to the state. Physical gold, if held in non-custodial private storage, is a critical step toward this zone. It is heavy, it is hard to move, move, but it is silent. It has no digital signature that the state can track from a distance. It is an offline asset that has survived the rise and fall of 1,000 empires. However, in the high volatility landscape of 2026, the physical transport of gold remains a vulnerability. This is where Bitcoin completes the sovereign perimeter. It allows you to move millions of dollars across borders in your mental workspace. By memorizing a 12-word seed phrase, you are turning your wealth into pure information. This is the ultimate predatory evolution. Information is the only thing that cannot be seized by physical force if the mind remains unbroken. This is why the giants fear Bitcoin. It represents the end of the monetary monopoly. It is a biological shield that makes the individual more powerful than the institution. You must understand the entropy of the visible fortress. In the old world, you protected your wealth by building walls of stone and hiring men with swords. In the digital panopticon of 2026, those walls are transparent to the digital eye of the matrix. Your visibility is your fragility. To be safe, you must become digital dust. You must move your assets out of your legal name and into sovereign structures that operate independently of your physical identity. This is the art of metabolic concealment. If the predator cannot see the surplus, he cannot harvest it. You must move from the vulnerable surface of the fiat system to the subterranean network of the hard money architecture. This requires a surgical extraction of your financial soul. You must have the coldness to live a life that appears standard on the surface while presiding over a hidden empire of hard assets that the state cannot even categorize. This is the standard of the apex. Consider the biology of the cold reserve. A sovereign man never keeps his entire life force in the active market or the centralized banking system. He maintains a hardened core, a reserve of gold and Bitcoin that is never touched, never leveraged, and never exposed to the light of the matrix. This is his winter shield. It is the resource that allows him to remain calm when the banks are closed, the ATMs are empty, and the streets are in chaos. While the masses are panicking because their rented wealth has evaporated, the sovereign man is watching with a cold, detached eye. He knows that his sovereign vault is secure. He has already paid the tax of discipline required to build the vault, so he does not have to pay the tax of despair during the reset. Your current refusal to harden your perimeter is evidence that you are still anchored to a prey-based reality. You are still hoping that the master will be fair. He won't be. He is a predator, and you are currently his primary energy source. The physics of seizure dictates that anything that can be turned off with a switch is not yours. Your credit cards, your digital fiat, and your brokerage accounts are all switched assets. They exist at the pleasure of the giants. Gold and Bitcoin are unswitched assets. No one can turn off your physical gold, and no one can turn off the decentralized Bitcoin network. They are environmental realities that exist outside the social contract. To survive the reset of 2026, you must maximize your exposure to the unswitched and minimize your exposure to the switched. This is a thermal calculation. You are reducing your dependency on the heat of the matrix and increasing your reliance on the coldness of the universe. You are building a life support system that operates on a different frequency than the dying civilization around you. Recognition of this necessity is the only way out of the mud. Furthermore, we must address the sovereignty of the private ledger. In a world where every transaction is tracked and every movement is recorded, privacy is not a luxury. It is a strategic requirement for survival. If the system knows what you have, it knows how to control you. By using decentralized exchanges, peer-to-peer gold markets, and privacy-enhancing tools, you are marking your territory in a way that the giants cannot breach. You are creating a dark zone where your life force is hidden from the great harvest. This is the ultimate persistence hunt. You are the predator who moves in the shadows, silent and invisible, until the moment of the strike. You are not breaking the law. You are asserting the higher law of biological sovereignty. You are taking responsibility for your own survival in an era where the institutions have abandoned their responsibility to you. As the fiat system enters its terminal volatility spiral, the physics of seizure will become the primary mechanism of state survival. They will come for the bank accounts first, then the retirement funds, and finally the physical assets of the unevolved. The only ones who will remain sovereign are those who have already exited into the sovereign vault. You must be the one who is already across the border, even if your body is still in the city. You must be the one who owns nothing on paper, but controls everything in reality. This is the architecture of the new world. It is a world of hard money and soft footprints. Stand up. audit your visibility, and move your energy into the silence where the parasites cannot follow. The gates are closing, the harvest is beginning. Harder your perimeter or prepare to be consumed. The final integration of the flight to safety is the construction of your private strategic reserve. You must cease to view your activities through the flickering, high-frequency lens of a day trader or a consumer and begin to see them through the low-frequency, immovable lens of a dynastic architect. In the unyielding landscape of 2026, the global financial architecture is undergoing a phase shift of historical proportions, a transition from a centralized debt-based model of extraction to a decentralized asset-based model of sovereignty. Those who remain anchored to the old model, clinging to the promises of the fiat matrix, will be liquidated with clinical indifference. Those who have already migrated their life force into the new architecture will become the new giants of the emerging era. This is the Great Reset from a predatory perspective. It is not a social project. It is the consolidation of the world's remaining energy into the hands of those who were cold enough to anticipate the collapse. You are not just buying Bitcoin or storing gold. You are claiming territory in the new world before the gates are locked. Let us analyze the biology of the barbell strategy. To survive the winter of the reset, you must employ a defensive posture that accounts for both the total digital collapse and the total physical seizure. This is the 50-50 sovereign split. Gold provides the ancient stability, the physical offline anchor that has survived every dark age since the dawn of the hunt. It is your zero-point insurance against the failure of the electrical grid or the disintegration of the digital infrastructure. Bitcoin provides the future optionality, the high-velocity, unseasonable engine of growth that allows you to move and scale your influence in a world of algorithmic control. Together, they create a sovereign synergy that makes you immune to the binary risks of the modern age. If the internet goes dark, you have the gold. If the borders are closed, you have the Bitcoin in your mind. This is the only way to achieve systemic immortality. You are no longer a participant in the global economy. You are the master of your own private economy. Consider the pathology of the subsidized slave. As the fiat matrix enters its terminal volatility spiral, the giants will attempt to maintain control through the implementation of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and universal basic income. They will offer you a safety net that is actually a digital shackle. They will promise to protect your purchasing power in exchange for total visibility into your every transaction, your every movement, and your every thought. They will use the desperation of the masses, the unevolved who have no hard core, to force a global compliance to this new digital serfdom. If you do not have a private reserve of gold and Bitcoin, you will be forced to accept this bargain. You will have no exit velocity. You will be a biological unit whose energy is metered and controlled by a central algorithm. The sovereign man, however, is immune to this blackmail. He does not need the state's permission to eat, to trade, or to build his dynasty. He has his own life force stored in a medium that is chemically and mathematically beyond the state's reach. The entropy of the unprepared is the primary fuel for the next phase of the matrix. The unevolved believe that the safe path is to follow the instructions of the very institutions that are currently failing. They stay in the middle of the bell curve, diversifying into different brands of the same paper illusion. They are short-time preference organisms, incapable of enduring the friction required to build a real vault. When the systemic freeze happens, when the bank holidays are announced and the digital fiat is devalued overnight, these individuals will experience a metabolic shock from which they will never recover. They will be the ones begging for the CBDC rescue package. You must recognize that samomune vitascit, that as a lone biological unit, you cannot fight the momentum of a collapsing civilization. You need the algorithmic armor of the Bitcoin network and the chemical shield of physical gold to act as your silent allies. You are building a life support system that operates independently of the dying host. You must have the coldness to perform the clinical liquidation of the non-essential. This is the moment where you prune the metabolic fur of your existence. You sell the depreciating toys, the high-maintenance status symbols, and the fragile equities that are subservient to the matrix. You move that energy, every last unit of it, into the hardened core. You are building a fortress that is designed to survive a 100-year storm. This is the standard of the apex. You do not look for approval from the unevolved. They will call you obsessive or paranoid until the moment the lights go out. Then they will call you lucky. You know it is not luck, it is strategic extraction. You are the one who saw the entropy on the radar and acted with the precision of a predator. You are the black swan of the financial system, the variable that the giants could not account for because you refused to play their game. The hunt for safety is not a financial goal, it is a biological mandate. You owe it to your ancestors who survived the Black Deaths, the World Wars, and the famines of the past to ensure that the flame of your lineage is not extinguished by a bureaucratic decree. You owe it to your descendants to provide them with a hardened foundation from which they can launch their own hunts in the new world. You must recognize that slepo povtorenie chujik scenariev put vinikuda, that following the herd into the safe path provided by the media is a guarantee of shared destruction. You must be the contrarian predator. You buy the truth when it is cheap because the masses are too afraid to look at it. You hold the truth when it is heavy because the masses are too weak to carry it. You are not investing, you are securing the flame. The environment of the future is a zero-sum filter. As the grand sifting of capital concludes, the world will be divided into two classes, the sovereign owners and the subsidized slaves. The sovereign owners are those who own the hard assets, the gold, the Bitcoin, the land, and the digital engines. They are the architects of the new reality. The subsidized slaves are those who own nothing but digital permissions to exist. They are the fuel for the new machine. By completing your flight to safety today, you are choosing your side of history. You are performing the final reclamation of your life force. You are moving from a state of victimhood to a state of absolute responsibility. This is the ultimate persistence hunt. You have survived the noise, you have audited the ledger, and you have built the vault. Finally, we must talk about the sovereignty of the final stand. The flight to safety is the movement of your spirit from a state of prey to a state of apex dominance. You have the information, you have the tools, and you have the protocols. The only thing left is the sovereign will to act. You can continue to be a biological battery for the matrix, paying your inflation tax and your compliance tax until you are recycled, or you can become the owner of your own life force. You can be the one who is harvested, or you can be the harvester of the future. The choice is yours. The paper is burning. The digital gates are closing. The giants are hungry. Harder your reserve. Secure your keys and claim your place in the new architecture of the immortal. Recognition of this reality is the only way out of the mud. Stand up, stop hoarding paper, and start harvesting the hard energy of the future.